Hey y'all, what's up? Welcome back to FVD and NoLimits 2. If you remember the last episode, we got through the turnaround on our out and back Mac, and I briefly worked on the return to the station. I went ahead and completed almost all of that, but don't worry, we didn't miss anything. It's just basically smaller versions of the airtime hills that we've already worked on, so I didn't leave you behind. But if you do remember, I promised to end the ride with a bang, and now we're set up to do that. The big finale is going to be a Norwegian loop that dives down a cliffside and then back up onto the brakes and into the station. But before we get to that, let's take a quick ride on Something Wicked and see what we have so far. Alright, so let's get started on this. And before you ask, those are not the final colors on the ride. I just went ahead and slapped that on there because I was tired of looking at it white. And I did kind of smooth out some of these hills right here just because they were a little bit too abrupt, I think, in the video and in the previous view we were looking at. So I just smoothed this out just a little bit, made some of the transitions a little bit longer, just so it's not quite so jackrabbit. It was kind of like up and down really quick. So I tried to smooth it out a little bit. So let's go ahead and get started on the Norwegian loop. And remember, it's going to dive down cliffside right here. Right down in here underground. I haven't made one of these in a while, so we might have to fool around with it a little bit. But we'll get it done. And so all I've done is I finished the out section, I finished the back section, and I created a new force for the Norwegian loop so we could do that entirely separately. And I went ahead and made this dynamic, and I haven't made both. I haven't made the roll dynamic yet because I want to do something before we get started in the loop. If you take a look at Fahrenheit at Hershey Park, if you take a look at the on-ride footage, one thing you'll notice is when it goes into the Norwegian loop, the track banks to the left, but before that it banks just a little bit to the right. Excuse me. I know Intamin does this on Intimidator 305 as well. It banks a little bit to the left after the first drop. It banks a little bit to the left before it banks totally to the right, and it creates a really cool sensation. It seems to make the banking smoother. It feels smoother overall. It has a more flow to it. So I'm going to do that with this loop as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is just take this roll section here, and we're on Quartic, and I'm just going to bank it a little bit the opposite direction of the way I want to go. And that's probably a little bit too long. I'm going to make it a little bit shorter, and this is going to come down in just a minute. And then I'm going to go ahead and append, and it's going to bank the totally other direction. I'm going to go ahead and just type in 180. Now you see that's not showing up because we don't have the force section here, so the normal force section here. So let's go ahead and get that. We're going to start taking this down to about a negative, about right there. And we're going to append it. And you can see already we're starting to get a shape that we want. Now, obviously, that's not perfect. We're going to fix that up, but let me take a ride. That doesn't look too good. All right, let me stretch this out just a little bit. About like that. And let me get rid of this. Whoops. Lateral force, just because it's interfering with our normal force. And I'm going to This is going to have to start coming up in just a minute. All right, so that doesn't look like exactly what we're looking for, but you can see at least the shape is starting to come in. The general idea of the Norwegian loop is coming in. So what we need to do is, you have to think about it for a second. What do we want? We want this to roll just a little bit more. So I'm going to make this, just take this up until we get complete inversion. Oh, let me zoom in a little bit here. That looks a little bit better. And then we need this force to start increasing, because we went to a negative force about right here. Not negative, but we're at floater right here. It's floating now. It needs to really start increasing. So let's bring this in. And we'll take it up to 3.5. And I can tell you at the bottom of the Norwegian loop on Fahrenheit at Hershey Park, there is a strong negative or strong positive G's. So right now we've got a 3.5. I'm going to probably bring this up once we get down to the bottom. Let's get down there. Make this dynamic for now. And add some more on here. .5, and how far down are we? 55 feet. Excuse me. Still recovering from a cold. I'm going to bring this. Actually, I'm going to make this, I think. Let's make this a little bit longer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this quartic. And this way we can increase G's up to about 4. We're nearly 60 feet down, and we are going 60 miles an hour. All right. Let's get back up here and work on this a little bit, because that looks really odd. And this is where you get to where you just have to start playing around with it. So one thing, if you remember in a previous episode, one thing I said was oftentimes when you need to fix something that's going on here in FVD, you have to fix the forces going into it before. So our Norwegian loop is all its one force, and I'm not going to be able to fix anything that happens before this point. What I can do is make this a little shorter, I think. And let me prepend something here just a bit. Nope. Remove that. Make this a little bit longer. And this is one of the reasons, actually, I don't like making, using different force sections, because now if I want to change what's going on to this portion right here, I have to go back in this force section and do it. And it's just a lot of extra clicking, in my opinion, but I can probably take this down to something like that. And let's see here. Nope. Make that back longer again. All right, I'm going to change the length of this, make it a little bit longer. See what it does. Turn this a little bit more the opposite direction. I don't like the speed this is going. It's going kind of... And I'm also going to bank this a little bit more. And that's just because I don't like the... Well, actually, I might leave it like that. Because we have to imagine here, there's like a cliffside right here. We don't want it to get too close. I might bank it just a little bit. Bring it over to the left a little bit. About right there. And we'll probably have to adjust that as well. Alright, so that's the basic shape there, but that looks kind of ugly. I'm not too happy with that. Let me... What to do? Let me get this off of here. Or if I can extend this a little bit. Nope. That looks alright. Let's see. Something about this is just not right. This whole thing is happening too quickly, I think. It's a lot of roll in just a minute and a half. So let's make it a little bit more like that. And now we can take it down a bit. And you see what's happening here. I made it just a little bit longer because it just seemed too abrupt. That seems more reasonable. And now I'm going to decrease the roll so that it moves back over a little bit this way. And actually, I'm going to take this the opposite direction, because what I want this to do is ultimately come back up here, maybe drop down and go onto the brake run, because I set the track up over here so that we're going in the basic general direction to come into a brake run right here and then just come around into the station. And then we've got room for the transfer track, all that. So let's see how that rides. Just go back a little ways. All right, that'll do for now. So now we're going to append, bring this down to 0. And this is also where we can start playing with the center and the tension to move this around, and I'll show you what we mean in just a minute. Actually, let's try it over here and just see. I don't think it's going to make much difference over here. What this does is change the center of this function right here, this graph. So if we move the center, it makes whatever's happening move over more to the left or to the right. We increased it by 1.4. That's actually quite a lot. Generally, I don't go more than 1. Excuse me. And I'm not really seeing a benefit to knowing that right now. I might fool around with it a little bit more later on. I like the way it looks there. Generally, what's going to happen is I'm going to just go ahead and finish this up. For now, we'll get the basic shape down. And then you can start fooling around with some of these variables just to see if you can get the shape more closely to your liking. And one thing I would recommend doing is saving before you start doing that. And you can see I actually added a 2.1 because remember we talked about version control before. So one of the things I went ahead and did was copy this one and add it as 2.1 when I changed the smoothness of this part. Just because if I get if I make a bunch of changes and I decide I don't like what I did, it's just easier to go back that way. All right, so let me move this down to 0, and we're gonna, obviously we need this to start rolling again. I'm gonna take off dynamic because the roll is going over this entire portion, and I wanna start a new roll about right here. So let's take this off to about right there. Append. And let's do 180. And obviously that's not exactly what we want, but thing is we'll get it started and then we'll fix it. Make this about 220. And shorten this just a little bit. Okay, we're going to stretch this out because that's a lot of bank to rolling in one. And this is going to come back up. The normal force is going back up to about 3.5 again. Let's take a quick ride on this and see what it looks like. All right, not too bad. The shape is a little bit off, but we can fool around with that. Let's make this a little longer and see what happens. I don't know. Make it about like that. Excuse me. This is what, 1 second, going back up to 3.5, and now it's back down on the ground. Let's check and see. All right, that's not too bad. It's not a perfect shape, but like I said, we can fix that. It's the basic shape. It's not too bad. What I'll do is off camera, I will go ahead and just fool around with this a little bit, change some of these variables, but you can see the basic shape here is not too bad. Let me roll this a little bit more just because, whoops. I want it coming out more this direction, so let's and then I might stretch that out just a bit too. And you see usually what happens when you stretch it out is it goes more, because now it's going, the roll speed is going on for a longer amount of time. So now we can reduce this just a little bit. And we're at negative 2.74. It's all right with me. I'm going to go ahead and make this dynamic. Append right here, and basically for now we are finished with that because I'm going to have it go up right here. Onto the brake run, and actually let's make this 2-0 just so we can have it as a perfectly straight. Whoops. And this is one of those weird things that just happens when you get up close to vertical. It'll straighten itself out right there, you see. Once you start reducing the track down away from vertical, it will fix itself, so long as the program doesn't crash. All right. So we've got ourselves pretty much set up to come in here to the brake run and then turn around and go back to the station. Excuse me. That part is fairly simple. I'm probably not going to do all that on film just because I think you can do that. You can figure it out from what we've done so far. Once you finish the 4 section, let me see if I can do it real fast. Actually, let me bring this down to negative 0.1. Append. And then we want it to be at regular force, which is going to be 0.981. Roughly, we get it at 955. And because it's going from 1 to 1, it's only moving about 2. I'm going to reduce this to about 7. Let's see what that rides with like. All right. I can patch that up a little bit too. So now we are assuming now it's on the brake run, and we just add a straight section, and always at a downward angle, obviously. This one's a little bit much. It's -9, but that's all right. So we've set it up so that now we can extend that for a bit, have that as the brake run, and then it'll just turn around and come back in here using regular curve pieces and straight pieces. So that is a Norwegian loop. I understand that it's not the most perfect looking one from here. Like I said, I'm going to fix it up a little bit, but that's the basics of it. I think you get the hang of it from that. You can try it. You can continue to fool around with it to get the shape you like, and I think you'll find it's not very hard to do. So that's it for this video. When we come back, we're going to export this ride to NoLimits 2. Then I'm going to work on the scenery, the detailing, and so forth. And then we'll be pretty much ready, I think, to do a final video with the POV. So I hope it's helpful. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.